Marcus Thompson pulled into his usual parking spot behind Thompson and Co. at exactly 7:15 a.m. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the empty street of downtown Seattle's fashion district. He smiled as he looked up at the elegant gold lettering on the black storefront, a dream he had turned into reality 5 years ago. At 32, Marcus wasn't what most people expected when they thought of a luxury boutique owner. Today, like most days, he wore comfortable dark jeans, a gray cashmere sweater, and his favorite pair of limited edition sneakers. His mother always told him to dress for comfort when handling the behind-the-scenes work, saving his designer suits for client meetings and special events. As he unlocked the back door, the familiar scent of leather and perfume welcomed him home. The store wouldn't open to customers for another 2 hours, but these quiet morning moments were his favorite part of the day. Marcus flicked on the lights one section at a time, bringing his 3,000-square-foot boutique to life. Walking through the store, his fingers gently brushed against the designer handbags he had carefully selected during his last buying trip to Paris. Each item in Thompson & Co. had been personally chosen by him, from the smallest wallet to the most expensive jewelry piece. The store was more than just a business, it was his life's work. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his inventory app, something he had developed himself during his earlier days in corporate finance. "Time to get to work," he mumbled, starting his daily routine of checking stock and adjusting displays. His attention to detail had helped him build one of Seattle's most exclusive shopping destinations from scratch. The journey hadn't been easy. He remembered the skeptical looks from bank managers when he first applied for a business loan. Some had even suggested he might be more successful in a different market. But Marcus had done his research. He knew the luxury retail market inside and out, and he knew he could succeed if given the chance. 5 years later, Thompson & Co. had proven all the doubters wrong. The store now served some of Seattle's wealthiest clients, and their loyalty had helped him open a second location in Portland just last month. Marcus smiled as he straightened a slightly crooked display of silk scarves, remembering how his father had taught him the importance of presentation in their family's small convenience store. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson." Sarah's cheerful voice echoed through the store. His first employee had arrived for the day. Sarah had been with him since the beginning, starting as a part-time sales associate and now serving as his store manager. "Morning, Sarah," Marcus replied warmly. "How was your weekend?" "Great, and I already see you're doing inventory checks again," she laughed, hanging up her coat. "You know we have staff for that now, right?" Marcus shrugged with a grin. "Old habits die hard. Besides, I like knowing exactly what's happening in my store." As more employees arrived, Marcus continued his morning routine, now checking the new shipment of designer shoes that had arrived the previous evening. Each pair needed to be inspected, logged into inventory, and perfectly displayed. He had built his reputation on attention to detail and personal service. The morning sun now streamed through the store's front windows, making the crystal chandeliers sparkle and cast tiny rainbows across the white marble floors. Marcus paused his work to look around his boutique with pride. From the custom-made display cases to the plush fitting rooms, every detail reflected his vision of affordable luxury with impeccable service. Little did Marcus know that this ordinary morning was about to become anything but routine. As he made final adjustments to a display of luxury handbags, checking their alignment for the third time, the front door's bell chimed. Their first customer of the day had arrived, and with them would come a challenge that would test not just his patience, but his character. Marcus straightened up, ready to greet whoever had walked in, maintaining the same professional demeanor he showed to every customer. After all, in his line of work, first impressions were everything, even though some people's first impressions of him weren't always what they expected from a luxury boutique owner. Patricia Whitfield's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she entered Thompson & Co. at precisely 10:15 a.m. Her designer handbag swung from her arm as she paused just inside the entrance, surveying the store like a queen inspecting her kingdom. At 55, Patricia prided herself on being one of Seattle's most discerning shoppers, and Thompson & Co. had become her favorite boutique over the past 3 years. Today, she wore a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her perfectly styled silver hair and expensive jewelry marked her as someone used to the finer things in life. The store's employees recognized her immediately. Mrs. Whitfield visited at least twice a month, always during late morning hours when the store was quiet. Sarah, the store manager, stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitfield. Lovely to see you again." "Yes, good morning," Patricia replied, barely glancing at Sarah. Her attention had already fixed on something else, or rather, someone else. Near the luxury handbag section, a black man in casual clothes was carefully examining an expensive purse, making notes on his phone. Patricia's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in concern. In her mind, something didn't look right. She had never seen this man in the store before, and he certainly didn't fit her image of Thompson and Co.'s usual clientele. The fact that he was dressed in jeans and a sweater, rather than a business suit, only added to her suspicions. She watched as Marcus lifted the handbag, checking its interior and making more notes on his phone. Patricia's throat tightened with anxiety. In her mind, she was already creating a story about what she was seeing, one shaped by her own prejudices and assumptions. "Sarah," Patricia called out in a loud whisper that wasn't really a whisper at all. "Who is that man over there? Is someone watching him?" Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, that's actually..." But Patricia cut her off, her voice growing more urgent. "He's handling the merchandise rather suspiciously, don't you think? I've been coming here for years, and I know what sort of clientele Thompson and Co. usually attracts." The other customers in the store began to take notice of Patricia's not-so-subtle commentary. A young couple browsing nearby quickly moved to a different section, clearly uncomfortable with the situation unfolding before them. Marcus, still focused on his inventory work, remained unaware of the drama brewing. He moved behind the counter to check something in the storage area, which only served to heighten Patricia's anxiety. "Did you see that?" Patricia gasped, clutching her pearls. "He's going behind the counter now. This is completely unacceptable. Where is security? Where is the owner? I've never met Mr. Thompson, but I'm sure he wouldn't want this sort of person having free rein in his store." The irony of her words hung heavy in the air as the staff exchanged knowing looks. Sarah tried again to explain, "Mrs. Whitfield, if you'll just let me." But Patricia was already pulling out her phone, her manicured fingers quickly dialing the shopping center's security number, a number she had saved just in case, but had never thought she'd need to use in her favorite boutique. "Yes, hello. This is Patricia Whitfield calling from Thompson & Co. There's a suspicious individual here who needs to be removed immediately. He's dressed very casually, jeans and a sweater, and he's handling expensive merchandise. Now he's behind the counter. No, none of the staff seems to be doing anything about it. This is exactly the sort of situation that requires immediate attention." As Patricia ended her call, she stood straighter, feeling satisfied with herself for taking action. In her mind, she was protecting not just the store but the exclusive shopping experience she had come to expect from Thompson & Co. Little did she know, her actions were about to lead to one of the most embarrassing moments of her life. The security guards were already on their way, but this situation was going to unfold very differently from what Patricia imagined. As she waited near the entrance, watching Marcus like a hawk, she had no idea that she was about to learn a valuable lesson about prejudice and assumptions, one that would change her perspective forever. The tension in Thompson & Co. grew thicker by the minute. Patricia paced near the entrance, her heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor as she waited for security to arrive. Every few seconds, she would glance at Marcus, who was still focused on his work, completely unaware of the storm brewing around him. Sarah, the store manager, tried one more time to prevent the situation from escalating. "Mrs. Whitfield, please, if you would just let me explain." "Not now, Sarah." Patricia cut her off with a dismissive wave. "I know what I'm seeing. I've been shopping in luxury stores for longer than you've been alive." She straightened her cream-colored jacket and watched as Marcus moved to another display case. "Just because you're too afraid to handle this situation doesn't mean I am." Other customers in the store were now openly staring at the unfolding drama. A mother quietly ushered her teenage daughter toward the exit, whispering something in her ear. Two elderly women stopped browsing and watched with disapproving looks, though it wasn't clear whether their disapproval was directed at Marcus or Patricia. Marcus had moved to the jewelry section, carefully checking each piece against his inventory list on his phone. He pulled out a small notebook from his back pocket and made some additional notes. This simple action caused Patricia to gasp audibly. "Look, he's writing something down. He's probably planning which items to steal. Patricia's voice carried across the store, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is exactly why high-end stores need to be more careful about who they let in. Lisa, a new sales associate who had only been working at the store for 2 weeks, stood frozen behind the counter. She looked desperately at Sarah for guidance, her face showing the internal struggle between wanting to defend her boss and not wanting to lose her new job by confronting a wealthy customer. Just then, the store's front door opened, and 2 security guards entered. They were both familiar faces at Thompson & Co., having worked at the shopping center for years. The taller guard, Mike, immediately recognized Marcus, but kept his face professional as he approached Patricia. "Ma'am, you called about a suspicious person?" Mike asked, already knowing this situation was about to take an interesting turn. Patricia pointed dramatically at Marcus. "Yes, that man over there. He's been handling expensive merchandise, making notes, and even went behind the counter. I've never seen him here before, and he's clearly not your typical Thompson & Co. customer." She lowered her voice to what she probably thought was a whisper, but was still clearly audible. "Just look at how he's dressed." The second security guard, James, had to turn away to hide his smile. He had known Marcus for years and had even attended the store's grand opening celebration. Marcus finally looked up from his work, noticing the small crowd that had gathered. He saw the security guards and gave them a friendly wave, still unaware that he was the source of the commotion. "Ma'am," Mike started to explain, but Patricia was on a roll. "Don't you see? He's acting like he owns the place." Her voice rose with indignation. "I've been shopping here for years, and I know Mr. Thompson would never allow this sort of behavior in his store. While I've never met him personally, I'm sure he runs a much tighter ship than this." Sarah couldn't hold back any longer. "Mrs. Whitfield, that's exactly what I've been trying to tell you. That man is." But before she could finish, Marcus started walking toward them, a concerned look on his face as he finally sensed the tension in his store. He had dealt with similar situations before, but never in his own establishment. As he approached, Patricia stepped behind the security guards, clutching her designer handbag tightly. "I demand you remove this person immediately," Patricia declared, her voice echoing through the now silent store. "This is Thompson & Co., not some common shop. We have standards here." The irony of her words hung in the air as Marcus reached into his back pocket. Instead of the weapon or stolen goods Patricia might have been expecting, he pulled out a business card holder with the Thompson & Co. logo embossed in gold. The morning light streaming through the store's windows caught the gold lettering, making it shimmer, just like the sign outside that bore his name. The morning sun streaming through Thompson & Co.'s front windows seemed to pause in time as Marcus approached the group. Every eye in the store was fixed on the scene unfolding before them. The only sound was the soft background music playing through the store's speakers and Patricia's anxious breathing. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus asked calmly, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to handling difficult situations. He looked between the security guards, Patricia, and his staff, taking in the tension in everyone's postures. Patricia stepped forward, her confidence boosted by the presence of security. "Yes, there certainly is. You have no right to be handling expensive merchandise and going behind counters. This is an exclusive establishment, and I've already called security to have you removed." Mike, the taller security guard, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ma'am, perhaps we should." "No," Patricia interrupted again, her voice growing louder. "I've been shopping here for years. I know what's best for this store. Mr. Thompson would be appalled to know that someone like—" She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Someone dressed so casually is freely roaming around touching everything." A few gasps came from the small crowd that had gathered. Sarah, the store manager, pressed her hands against her face in embarrassment. The new employee, Lisa, had retreated behind a display, peeking around it to watch what was happening. Marcus's expression remained neutral, though those who knew him well could see the slight tightening around his eyes. The only sign that Patricia's words had affected him. He faced prejudice before, but having it happen in his own store, a place he built from the ground up, struck a particularly painful chord. "Someone like me?" Marcus repeated quietly, his tone level but firm. "Could you please explain what you mean by that, ma'am?" Patricia's chin lifted defiantly. "Well, look at how you're dressed. Jeans and a sweater in a luxury boutique. and you're handling expensive merchandise, making notes. It's suspicious. I'm simply looking out for the store's best interests." "I see," Marcus replied, nodding slowly. He turned to the security guards. "Mike, James, good morning. I trust you're both doing well today?" "Yes, sir, Mr. Thompson." James responded with a slight smile, emphasizing the last two words. Patricia's expression flickered with confusion. "Mr. Thompson." But Marcus wasn't finished. He turned back to Patricia, maintaining his professional demeanor. "Ma'am, you mentioned several times that you know what Mr. Thompson would want. Since you've never met him before, I'm curious, what exactly do you think Mr. Thompson is like?" The color began to drain from Patricia's face as realization slowly dawned. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. Marcus continued, his voice still calm, but now carrying an edge of authority that was impossible to miss. "Because as the owner of Thompson & Co., I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts about how I should run my store." The silence that followed was deafening. A few customers in the background covered their mouths in shock. Sarah couldn't help but let out a small, satisfied smile. Patricia's face had turned from pale to bright red. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she clutched her designer handbag closer. You're Mr. Thompson? But I thought..." "You thought what, exactly?" Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his business card, holding it out to her. The gold-embossed letters caught the light. Marcus Thompson, owner and CEO, Thompson & Co. The security guards exchanged knowing looks, while nearby customers whispered among themselves. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, highlighting the uncomfortable tableau. Patricia's mortified expression, the security guards' barely concealed amusement, and Marcus's dignified stance. Patricia stared at the business card in Marcus's extended hand as if it might bite her. The reality of her actions was crashing down around her perfectly styled hair. She had just called security on the owner of her favorite boutique, all because she had made assumptions based on his appearance. The moment stretched out, heavy with unspoken words and uncomfortable truths. Marcus still held out his card, waiting patiently, while Patricia struggled to process how dramatically her morning shopping trip had turned into what was possibly the most embarrassing moment of her life. Time seemed to stand still in Thompson & Co. as Patricia stared at the business card in Marcus's outstretched hand. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, but the warm light did nothing to ease the chill that had settled over the store. The soft background music playing through the speakers suddenly felt inappropriate for the heavy moment. Finally, with trembling fingers, Patricia took the card. Her eyes moved over the gold-embossed letters again and again, as if reading them enough times might somehow change what they said. Her face had turned from bright red to a sickly pale color, and her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her distress. I don't understand," she stammered, though it was clear from her expression that she understood all too well. "You're the owner. But you're..." She stopped herself before finishing the sentence, finally realizing how her words would sound. Marcus gave her a steady look. "I'm what, Mrs. Whitfield? Not what you expected? Dressed too casually? Or is there something else about my appearance that doesn't fit your image of a luxury boutique owner?" The other customers in the store had fallen completely silent, watching the scene unfold like an important play. Sarah, the store manager, stood nearby with a mixture of satisfaction and concern on her face. The security guards, Mike and James, had stepped back slightly but remained present, their roles now shifted from potential enforcers to witnesses. Patricia's designer handbag slipped from her arm and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. She didn't even notice. "Mr. Thompson, I had no idea. I'm so..." The words seemed to stick in her throat. "No, you didn't have any idea," Marcus agreed, his voice firm but not unkind. "You saw exactly what you expected to see, what your prejudices told you to see. A black man in casual clothes couldn't possibly be the owner of this store. Could he?" A few customers nodded in understanding, while others looked away uncomfortably, perhaps recognizing similar prejudices in themselves. Lisa, the new employee, had emerged from behind the display, watching her boss handle the situation with growing admiration. Marcus continued, "You know what's interesting, Mrs. Whitfield? This isn't even the first time something like this has happened to me. Though I admit, It's the first time it's happened in my own store. He gestured around at the boutique. Every piece in this store was personally selected by me. Those limited edition handbags you love so much, I chose them during my buying trip to Paris last month. The exclusive jewelry collection you praised to Sarah last week, I designed it in collaboration with local artisans. Patricia's lips quivered. The careful facade of superiority she had worn when entering the store had completely crumbled. Mr. Thompson, I am mortified. I never meant to. Yes, you did. Marcus interrupted gently. You meant exactly what you said and did. The only difference is that now you're embarrassed because your assumptions were wrong. A small gasp escaped from someone in the crowd. Marcus's words hung in the air, heavy with truth. The security guards exchanged knowing looks. They had seen similar situations before, but rarely handled with such grace. I should go, Patricia whispered, bending to retrieve her fallen handbag with shaking hands. I clearly don't deserve to shop here anymore. Marcus raised his hand, stopping her retreat. Actually, Mrs. Whitfield, I'd like you to stay. His voice had shifted, taking on a tone of authority mixed with something else. Opportunity. If you're willing, I think we need to have a conversation, one that's long overdue. He gestured toward his office door, visible at the back of the store. Would you join me? I believe we both could learn something from this morning's misunderstanding. The other customers watched as Patricia stood frozen, clutching her handbag like a shield. The choice before her was clear. She could flee in embarrassment, or she could stay and face the consequences of her actions head-on. Her next decision would reveal not just who she was, but who she could become. Marcus's office was nothing like Patricia had imagined it would be. Instead of the flashy, over-the-top luxury she expected, the room was tastefully decorated with clean lines and modern furniture. Large windows overlooked the busy downtown street, and the walls displayed framed photos of store openings and magazine features about Thompson & Co.'s success. Patricia sat stiffly in one of the comfortable leather chairs facing Marcus's desk, her hands still trembling slightly as they clutched her designer handbag. The security guards had returned to their regular duties, and Sarah had skillfully directed the remaining customers back to their shopping, giving them privacy. Would you like some water? Marcus asked, his voice breaking the heavy silence as he closed the office door. Patricia nodded weakly, unable to meet his eyes. Yes, please, she whispered, her usual confident tone completely gone. Marcus walked to a small refrigerator in the corner and pulled out 2 bottles of water. As he handed one to Patricia, she noticed a framed photo on his desk. A much younger Marcus standing proudly in front of an empty storefront, holding up a set of keys. That was day 1, Marcus said, noticing her gaze. 5 years ago, when this was just an empty space and a dream. He settled into his chair behind the desk. Would you like to know the story, Mrs. Whitfield? Patricia finally looked up, surprised by the lack of anger in his voice. Yes, I would. But Mr. Thompson, first I need to say how terribly sorry I am. My behavior was inexcusable. You're right, it was inexcusable, Marcus agreed calmly. But rather than just apologizing and leaving, never to return because you're too embarrassed, I'd like you to understand something larger here. He picked up the framed photo and placed it closer to Patricia. Before I opened Thompson & Co., I worked in corporate finance for 10 years. I wore expensive suits every day, drove a luxury car, and still had security called on me in high-end stores. I had bank managers suggest I might be more comfortable opening my business in a different neighborhood. Patricia winced at his words, recognition flickering across her face. She took a sip of water, her lipstick leaving a red mark on the bottle. When I finally got the loan to open this store, Marcus continued, I made a promise to myself. Thompson & Co. would be more than just another luxury boutique. It would be a place that challenged people's perceptions about who can succeed in this industry. He gestured to another photo on the wall. Marcus with a group of young people of various ethnicities, all wearing name tags and store uniforms. We run an internship program for minority students interested in fashion and retail management. Many of them have faced the same prejudices I have. Some of them have even had similar experiences to what happened today. Patricia's eyes filled with tears, smudging her carefully applied mascara. I never thought. I didn't realize. Most people don't realize, Marcus said gently. They don't think about how their assumptions affect others. They don't see how a single action, like calling security on someone because of how they look, can reinforce years of prejudice and pain. He leaned forward, his expression serious but compassionate. Mrs. Whitfield, you've been one of our best customers for 3 years. Your fashion sense and attention to quality have actually helped influence some of our buying decisions. Sarah often tells me about your suggestions. Patricia looked surprised at this information, a tiny bit of color returning to her pale cheeks. That's why this conversation is so important, Marcus continued. You have influence in your social circle. The way you treat people, the assumptions you make, they don't just affect the person in front of you. They ripple out and affect how others think and behave too. The morning sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the office floor. In the main store area, they could hear the muffled sounds of customers shopping, life continuing as normal while this important conversation unfolded. So, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, the question is, what happens next? Will this just be an embarrassing moment you try to forget, or could it be something more? Could it be a chance for real change? Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her hands steadier now but her composure still shaken. The morning's events had stripped away her usual armor of social status and privilege, leaving her facing uncomfortable truths about herself. I don't even know where to begin, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've always prided myself on being cultured, educated. But today, I behaved no better than the people I usually look down upon. Marcus nodded, letting her words hang in the air. Through his office windows, they could see the store's normal activities continuing. Sarah was helping a customer try on a necklace, while Lisa arranged a new display. The scene looked so ordinary, yet everything had changed. Can I tell you something, Mrs. Whitfield? Marcus asked, turning back to face her. When I was starting out, many people told me I was crazy to open a luxury boutique. They said I should stick to urban fashion or open in a different neighborhood. Some even suggested I hire a white person to be the face of the business. Patricia's eyes widened. That's horrible. How could they suggest such a thing? The same way you suggested I didn't belong in my own store, Marcus replied gently. These prejudices run deep, often in ways we don't even recognize in ourselves. Patricia flinched at his words, but didn't argue. Instead, she looked around the office more carefully, taking in the framed business degree on the wall, the fashion industry awards, the photographs of Marcus with famous designers. You built something remarkable here, she said softly, and I almost got security to throw you out of it. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. God, what must you think of me? Marcus leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. I think you're someone who just had a wake-up call. The question is, what will you do with this new awareness? He stood up and walked to a large corkboard on the wall covered with photographs. See these? These are our success stories. Former interns who now manage their own stores. Design students who got their first break here. People who faced the same prejudices I did, pushed through anyway. Patricia stood and moved closer to the board, studying the smiling faces. They're all so young, she murmured. Yes, and each one of them has probably experienced something similar to what happened today, Marcus explained. The difference is, they didn't have the power to call security. They just had to accept being followed around stores, being questioned about their presence in certain neighborhoods, being asked to prove they could afford what they were buying. The weight of his words settled over Patricia like a heavy blanket. She thought about all the times she might have made similar assumptions about people, times she hadn't even noticed her own prejudices at work. Mr. Thompson, she began, turning to face him, I know an apology isn't enough, but I want you to know that I truly am sorry, and more than that, I want to do better. I need to do better. Marcus smiled for the first time since the incident began. That's all any of us can do, Mrs. Whitfield. Recognize our mistakes, learn from them, and try to do better. He walked back to his desk and pulled out a folder. Actually, I have a proposal for you. We're planning a fundraiser next month for our internship program. Given your connections in the community and your eye for fashion, we could use someone like you on the planning committee. That is, if you're interested in being part of the solution. Patricia looked at the folder, then back at Marcus, surprise clear on her face. You want me to help? After what I did? Sometimes the people who learn the hardest lessons become the strongest advocates for change, Marcus replied. Besides, You've been shopping here for 3 years. You know our products, our customers, our standards. Why not use that knowledge for something meaningful? The morning sun had climbed higher, filling the office with warm light. Outside, the store continued its normal rhythm, but inside this office, something profound was shifting. Patricia reached for the folder with trembling fingers, not just accepting an invitation, but taking her first step toward real change. 1 month later, Thompson & Co. looked very different from that tense morning. The store was transformed for its biggest event of the year, the internship program fundraiser. Elegant decorations adorned the space, and soft jazz music played in the background. The guest list included Seattle's most influential people, and at the center of it all were Marcus Thompson and, surprisingly to some, Patricia Whitfield. Patricia stood at the entrance, greeting guests with a warmth that felt entirely genuine. She wore a stunning dress from Thompson & Co.'s latest collection, but more noticeable was the change in her demeanor. Gone was the aristocratic superiority she once carried like a shield. Instead, she displayed a new kind of confidence, one built on genuine growth and understanding. "Welcome to Thompson & Co." She greeted another group of guests. "Please, let me tell you about our amazing internship program." Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she shared stories about the opportunities the store was creating for young people from all backgrounds. Marcus watched from across the room, remembering their conversation from a month ago. He couldn't help but smile at how much had changed. Patricia had thrown herself into the fundraiser planning with remarkable dedication, using her social connections not to exclude people, but to open doors for others. Sarah approached Marcus, grinning. "Would you believe this is the same woman who called security on you? She's been amazing with the interns, you know. Yesterday, she spent 2 hours teaching them about fabric quality and customer service." "People can surprise you," Marcus replied, watching as Patricia introduced one of their young interns to the owner of another luxury boutique. "Sometimes they just need a chance to see their own prejudices and choose to be better." The fundraiser was turning out to be their most successful event ever. Patricia had helped raise more money than they'd initially hoped for, enough to double the size of their internship program for the next year. But more importantly, she had begun to change minds in her social circle, challenging the same prejudices she once held. Later in the evening, Marcus clinked his glass for attention. The store fell quiet as he prepared to speak. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began, his voice carrying across the room. "When I started Thompson & Co., I had a dream of creating more than just a luxury boutique. I wanted to create opportunities." He gestured to the young interns stationed around the store, all wearing their professional uniforms with pride. "Every person you see here has a dream, just like I did. Thanks to your generosity tonight, more dreams will have a chance to become reality." Patricia stood among the crowd, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Next to her, Lisa, no longer the nervous new employee, stood tall and confident, having been promoted to assistant manager with Patricia's recommendation. "But tonight, I want to share a different kind of success story," Marcus continued, looking directly at Patricia. "1 month ago, an incident in this store could have ended very differently. Instead, it became a moment of transformation, showing us that change is possible when we open our hearts and minds to new perspectives." Patricia felt the eyes of the crowd turn to her, but for once, she didn't mind the attention. She knew this story needed to be told, needed to be an example for others. "Today, we're not just celebrating the money we've raised," Marcus concluded. "We're celebrating the power of growth, of learning from our mistakes, and of choosing to be better. That's what Thompson & Co. stands for, and that's what each of you has supported tonight." The applause that followed was heartfelt. As the evening wound down, Patricia approached Marcus one last time. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing me a better way." Marcus smiled. "Thank you for being willing to learn. That's all any of us can do. Keep learning, keep growing, keep trying to make the world a little better than we found it." As the last guests departed, the store's lights dimmed except for the elegant display windows. Inside one of them stood a photograph from the evening. Marcus and Patricia standing with the group of interns, all smiling broadly. Below it, a small sign read, "At Thompson & Co., we don't just sell luxury. We create opportunities. We break barriers. We change lives." The story of what happened that morning had spread through Seattle's social circles, but not as a scandal. Instead, It had become a tale of transformation, proving that even the most deeply rooted prejudices could be overcome with understanding, courage, and the willingness to change.